12th of June, 1560. On this day, exactly 466 years ago, a narrow gorge in Owari province, Japan. The torrential summer rain suddenly stops, leaving an eerie silence, broken only by water dripping from the pines. And then the gorge erupts. 2,000 phantom warriors pour down the muddy vertical cliffs, their blades flashing in the gray light. They crash into a camp of 25,000 sleeping, drunken men. Canvas tents run red with blood as 15-foot spears thrust blindly through the fabric, impaling men before they can even reach for their swords. In the center of the slaughter, a great warlord wrestles in the bloody mud, his teeth tearing off the finger of his attacker, just seconds before cold steel severs his head from his shoulders. This was no traditional battle. It was a surgical, terrifying butchery. We are in the Sengoku Jidai, the age of warring states. Japan is a fractured, bleeding nation, locked in an endless cycle of civil war. Warlords known as daimyos battle for absolute supremacy. In the east, a massive army is on the march, 25,000 men flying the banners of the Imagawa clan. Their objective is the capital, Kyoto. Whoever controls the capital controls the emperor. Whoever controls the emperor rules Japan. But sitting directly in their path is the small, impoverished province of Owari. It is defended by a meager force of barely 2,500 men, led by a 26-year-old upstart warlord named Oda Nobunaga. Outnumbered 10-1, surrounded, doomed. Welcome to the battlefield. Today we plunge into the mud, the steel, and the blinding rainstorm of the Battle of Okehazama. We're going to break down the weapons of the samurai, the geographic bottleneck, and the most brilliant, suicidal decapitation strike in Japanese history. Bring history to life. Learn about some of the greatest empires and the wars that took place in their time. This is the battlefield, where we analyze some of the greatest battles in history, understand why they happened, and where they led. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. George Santayana. Let's look at the strategic nightmare facing Oda Nobunaga. The Imagawa army, led by the wealthy and powerful Imagawa Yoshimoto, has just crossed into Owari province. Yoshimoto's forces easily crush two of Nobunaga's border fortresses. Nobunaga calls his generals for a desperate war council at Kiyosu Castle. His advisors are terrified. They offer two options. Option 1, surrender, become vassals to Imagawa, and likely face execution. Option 2, barricade themselves inside the castle and withstand a siege. Nobunaga rejects both. A siege means starving to death. Surrender means losing his honor and his clan. Nobunaga recognizes a brutal tactical reality. If he fights a defensive war against 25,000 men, he will be crushed by sheer attrition. He has one option. He must cut the head off the snake. He must find Imagawa Yoshimoto himself in the middle of his massive army and kill him. Expecting to die, Nobunaga performs the Atsumori, a traditional warrior's dance. He famously recites the verse, "Man's life is but 50 years, a fleeting dream, an illusion. Is there anything in this world that lasts forever?" He downs a cup of sake, straps on his armor, and rides out. Before we march into the gorge, we need to examine the tools of this slaughter. It's time to open up the Armory. Let's look at the armies of the Sengoku period. Forget the Hollywood image of armies fighting exclusively with katanas. By 1560, Japanese warfare is a brutal, combined arms meat grinder. The bulk of both armies is made up of the ashigaru, the peasant foot soldiers. They wear the okashi gusuku, meaning borrowed armor or lent armor, a mass-produced munition armor consisting of a simple iron breastplate or do and a conical iron hat called a jingasa. These armors had inventory numbers, identification marks called ai-jirushi, or family crests called kaman painted in gold or vermilion. The simplicity of these armors allowed the daimyo to equip their armies in an efficient manner, while also allowing easy recognition during battle, similar to what we now know as uniforms. Their primary weapon is the yari, a devastating iron-tipped spear ranging from 15 to 20 feet long. Just like the Greek phalanx, the ashigaru form walls of spears to hold off cavalry and crush enemy infantry. While some of these soldiers did have blades, the dominating weapon without a doubt was the yari. But what about the samurai? The elite warriors wear the tosei gusoku, modern, flexible armor made of hundreds of small iron or leather scales laced together with silk, allowing for incredible mobility. On their heads, the terrifying kabuto helmets, often adorned with demon masks called mempo, to protect the face and terrify the enemy. For weapons, the samurai carry the tachi or the katana as close-quarters sidearms, but on the battlefield, their deadliest tool is the yumi, the asymmetrical Japanese longbow capable of punching through armor at 100 yards. The arrows fired from this bow were made from bamboo, known as ya, and unlike those found in the West, they're close to 3 feet or 1 meter long. These arrows used by the samurai had arrowheads forged from the very same steel used for blades, like katanas, and they even used the same methods to forge them. Let's talk about cavalry. Samurai used horses, but they would rarely fight on horseback due to the terrain and due to the size of the specific breed of horses found in Japan during the period. They were not your typical European chargers, but smaller, sturdy ponies. If the opportunity presented itself, the samurai would serve as a horse archer, which is why the yumi was shorter on the bottom, a clever design. Both the yari, for reach, and katana were also used on horseback. We must also mention that the ashigaru also used the yumi, but this wasn't as common, since the use of this weapon required substantial training. Which brings us to the next weapon, the great equalizer, the tanegashima. Introduced by the Portuguese just 17 years prior, these early matchlock muskets have revolutionized Japanese warfare. They require minimal training and can shatter samurai armor. Both sides have them, but as we are about to see, the matchlock has one fatal weakness: the weather. If you are still watching, consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video. It really helps. It is June 12th, midday. The heat is absolutely suffocating. The massive Imagawa army has halted its march. Yoshimoto, confident that Nobunaga's tiny force is cowering inside their castle, decides to rest his troops. He sets up his main camp in a place called Dengakuhazama, a narrow wooded gorge surrounded by steep hills. It is a terrible place to put an army. It's a bottleneck, but Yoshimoto is arrogant. He orders his men to break out the sake and celebrate their early victories. Yoshimoto himself rests in a luxurious silk-curtained palanquin. A few miles away, Nobunaga's scouts report Imagawa's position. Nobunaga sees his window. But how does an army of 2,500 men march across the hills and sneak up on 25,000 without being seen? Nobunaga uses deception. He orders a few hundred of his men to march to a highly visible fortified temple called Zenshoji overlooking the valley. He orders them to plant hundreds of Oda clan banners along the ridgeline. From the Imagawa camp, it looks like Nobunaga's entire army is digging in for a defensive stand at the temple. The Imagawa guards fixate their attention solely on those banners. Meanwhile, Nobunaga takes his main strike force of roughly 2,000 men and slips off the main road. They plunge into the dense, thick forests of the Kamagatani Valley, moving silently around the rear of the Imagawa camp. But even with the diversion, moving 2,000 armored men through a forest makes noise. Armor clanks, horses snort. The element of surprise is hanging by a thread. And then, the heavens open up. It isn't just a rain shower, it is a blinding, torrential summer squall. This is the turning point of the battle. The weather completely rewrites the tactical reality on the ground. First, the sound. The deafening roar of the rain, the thunder, and the wind howling through the brush completely drown out the noise of Nobunaga's 2,000 men marching through the brush. Second, visibility. The rain is coming down so hard that the Imagawa sentries cannot see more than 20 feet in front of them. Nobunaga's men are invisible phantoms closing in. And third, the armory. Remember the Tanegashima matchlocks? To fire, they require a burning slow match to ignite exposed gunpowder in a flashbang. In a torrential downpour, the gunpowder turns to wet sludge. The matches are extinguished. The deadliest ranged weapons in the Imagawa arsenal are instantly rendered entirely useless. Nobunaga halts his men just over the crest of the hill, looking down into the gorge. Below them, the Imagawa troops are huddled in their tents, seeking shelter from the storm, completely unaware of the blade hovering over their necks. Nobunaga waits. He lets the storm mask his final approach. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the rain stops. The sky clears. The fog lifts. The Imagawa soldiers look up the ridge. Standing less than 100 yards away is Oda Nobunaga and 2,000 fully armored samurai. Attack! The Oda forces pour down the steep, muddy banks of the gorge like an avalanche of steel. The shock is absolute. The Imagawa troops are completely unarmored, many of them drunk, seeking shelter in their tents. They don't even have time to pick up their spears. Nobunaga's vanguard crashes into the camp. The long yari spears thrust through canvas tents, impaling men before they even realize they are under attack. Samurai draw their katanas, hacking mercilessly through the panicked, disorganized Imagawa ranks. It is a massacre. The gorge, which Yoshimoto chose for shade and rest, now becomes a death trap. The steep walls prevent the massive Imagawa army from maneuvering or forming a defensive line. The sheer numbers of the Imagawa army become a fatal liability. Thousands of men trample each other into the mud, trying to escape the slaughter. Nobunaga does not care about routing the army. He points his sword at the center of the camp. He is looking for the silk curtains of the commander's palanquin. Inside the command tent, Imagawa Yoshimoto hears the chaotic screaming and the clash of steel. But he is so arrogant and so thoroughly convinced that Nobunaga is kilometers away that he steps out of his tent and angrily shouts at his men to stop their drunken brawling. Through the smoke and the mud, an Oda samurai spots him. Yoshimoto! Yoshimoto realizes with absolute horror that these are not his men. The banners are Oda. A handful of elite Imagawa bodyguards form a desperate ring of steel around their lord, trying to buy him time to retreat. Nobunaga's men swarm them. It is a vicious, point-blank melee. Blood sprays across the muddy grass. The bodyguards are cut down one by one. Yoshimoto is backed up against the walls of the gorge. He is no coward. As an Oda samurai named Hattori Koheta lunges at him with a spear, Yoshimoto draws his katana.
Yoshimoto deflects the spear thrust and slashes his katana, slicing Hattori's knee. But in the chaos, another Oda warrior, Mori Shinsuke, tackles Yoshimoto from the blind side. They crash into the mud. The two samurai grapple desperately in the bloody dirt. Yoshimoto, fighting for his life, actually manages to bite off Mori's finger. But the younger Oda warrior overpowers him. Mori draws his short blade, pins the great warlord to the earth, and drives the steel into his throat.
Mori stands up, covered in mud and blood. In his hands, he holds the severed head of Imagawa Yoshimoto. He holds it high into the air and screams his victory. When the Imagawa officers see the severed head of their invincible lord, the army completely breaks. 25,000 men drop their weapons and flee in sheer terror from a force 1/10 their size. The Battle of Okehazama is over. It lasts less than 2 hours. In the history of warfare, there are few battles that so dramatically alter the course of a nation. Had it not rained that day, Oda Nobunaga's approach would have been spotted. His tiny army would have been surrounded and annihilated. The Imagawa clan would have taken the capital, and the modern history of Japan would be entirely unrecognizable. Instead, the storm allowed a desperate, brilliant 26-year-old to execute the perfect decapitation strike. The victory at Okehazama catapulted Oda Nobunaga from a minor provincial warlord into a living legend. He would spend the rest of his life ruthlessly conquering the warring states, laying the groundwork for the eventual unification of all of Japan. It proved that on the battlefield, numbers are an illusion. Superior strategy, psychological shock, and the whims of the weather can shatter an empire in a matter of minutes. This was the battlefield. If you felt the rain and the steel today and want to march into more of history's greatest conflicts, make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and tell us in the comments which battlefield we should analyze next. Until then, hold the line. It's time to archive this one, but there will be another story worth telling. Check out our previous videos on screen and comment if you know of a battle that needs to be brought into the channel.